to get some tea. Okay. Challenges and criticisms. Resistance to change. Decolonizing the mind can be challenging due to the deep-seated nature of colonial ideologies and the resistance to change from those who benefit from the status quo. Intersectionality. The process of decolonization must also consider the intersection of various forms of oppression, such as racism, sexism, classism, to be truly effective. Conclusion. Decolonizing your mind is an ongoing process of unlearning colonial ideologies and reclaiming your cultural identity and heritage. It involves critical awareness, education, and active engagement with your community and history. By challenging the dominant narratives and valuing diverse perspectives, individuals can contribute to the broader movement of decolonization and work towards a more equitable and just society. So, I have some examples of corporate collusion with the Nazis. I'm gonna kind of swing back to that real quick. I have like a printout of General Motors, 1938, awarded Order of the German Eagle, first class, by Chancellor Adolf Hitler, and a swastika Coca-Cola tab, and then the picture of them, the Boone Parade, 1937, that we had read about. And I had asked the AI, can you elaborate on how the Nazi SS was a conglomerate of corporations with key research and development technologies? The Nazi Schutzstaffel SS was originally established as a paramilitary organization under Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party, but it evolved into a vast and complex entity that extended far beyond its initial role. Under Heinrich Himmler's leadership, the SS became a state within a state. That's really important, controlling significant aspects of Germany's political and economic military apparatus during the Third Reich. One of the most striking aspects of the SS was its involvement in economic enterprises and its exploitation of advanced research and development technologies, which were often tied to its ideological goals and war efforts. That's pretty fascinating. We had talked about it before of, using technology for ideology. This is probably one of the most extreme forms of that. The SS as an economic conglomerate. The SS established and controlled a network economic enterprises, often through its economic arm, the SS Wirtschafts- und Verwaltungswissenschaftsamt, WVHA. This organization oversaw a wide range of businesses, including manufacturing, mining, construction, and even publishing. These enterprises were not only profit-driven, but also served the SS' broader ideological and military objectives. Key aspects of the SS economic activities included exploitation of concentration camp labor. The SS used forced labor from concentration camps to fuel its economic enterprises. Prisoners were forced to work in SS-owned factories, quarries, and other industries under brutal conditions. Companies like IG Farben, a chemical conglomerate, and Siemens collaborated with SS to use slave labor for their operations, particularly in camps like Auschwitz. SS-owned companies. The SS directly owned and operated numerous companies. For example, Deutsche Erd- und Steinwerk, DEST, was an SS-owned company that produced building materials using forced labor. Another example is Deutsche Ostrüstungswerk, DAW, which manufactured weapons, uniforms, and other equipment. Control of key industries. The SS sought to dominate industries critical to the war effort, such as armaments, construction, raw materials. This included quarries, brickworks, and even pharmaceutical production. Aryanization and plunder. The SS played a central role in confiscation of Jewish-owned businesses and property known as Aryanization. This wealth was often funneled into SS enterprises or used to fund its operations, which I'll talk about this a little bit more later, how it was funneled into SS enterprises, but I'll just say that it went through Switzerland and Allen Dulles and the OSS and basically ended up with the CIA. So Switzerland and the Swiss bank was stashing all of this shit, and then the OSS and Allen Dulles kind of went rogue, working with the Nazis. Can you elaborate how the Nazi SS conglomerate of corporations with key research and development technologies was integrated into the CIA, NATO, and other institutions? The integration of former Nazi SS personnel, technologies, and corporate networks into post-World War II institutions such as the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, NATO, and other Western organizations is a complex and controversial aspect of Cold War history. This process was driven by geopolitical rivalry between the United States and its allies against the Soviet Union, as well as the desire to harness German scientific, technical, and intelligence expertise. Below is an elaboration on how this integration occurred. Operation Paperclip, recruiting Nazis and engineers. One of the most well-known programs for integrating Nazi personnel into Western institutions was Operation Paperclip, a secret U.S. initiative to recruit German scientists, engineers, and technicians after World War II. Many of these individuals had ties to the SS or Nazi regime, but their expertise was deemed too valuable to ignore. Some key figures. Werner von Braun, a leading rocket scientist, worked with the V-2 program using slave labor, became a central figure in the U.S. space program, working for NASA to develop Saturn V rocket that took humans to the moon. Hubertus Strughold, known as the father of space medicine, Strughold had conducted experiments on prisoners at Dachau. He later contributed to U.S. aerospace medicine. Kurt Blome, I think it's with the E, Blome, a Nazi biologist who had researched biological warfare. He was interviewed by U.S. intelligence but never formally employed. I don't know about that. Pretty sure that he did some work. Many paperclip scientists were brought to the United States to work on military, aerospace, and intelligence projects. Their knowledge of advanced technologies such as rocket propulsion, chemical weapons, biological weapons, and engineering was critical to U.S. efforts during the Cold War. Some of these individuals had direct or indirect ties to U.S. enterprises, such as the V-2 rocket program, which was heavily reliant on forced labor from concentration camps. CIA and the Gehlen Organization. Leveraging Nazi intelligence networks, the CIA played a significant role in integrating former Nazi intelligence operatives into its own networks. One of the most notable examples was the Gehlen Organization, led by Reinhard Gehlen, a former Nazi intelligence officer who had overseen military intelligence on the Eastern Front. Reinhard Gehlen had extensive knowledge of Soviet operations and networks in Eastern Europe. After the war, he offered his expertise to the U.S. The CIA funded and supported the Gehlen Organization, which became a foundation of West Germany's post-war intelligence services. The Bund ist Nachrichten. Interesting. It started with Bund again, so they went back to the like weird Nazi name. Even after, this is post-war. This is West Germany. So the American side of Germany, they had Nazis in charge. SS and Gestapo personnel. Many former SS and Gestapo officers were recruited into the Gehlen Organization and, by extension, the CIA. Their expertise in espionage and counterintelligence and interrogation techniques was highly valued. Some of these individuals had been involved in war crimes, but their pasts were often whitewashed to facilitate their interrogation. Some of them were very, very bad. The formation of NATO in 1949 created a framework for integrating West Germany and former Nazi personnel into the Western Alliance. This was part of a broader strategy to rebuild Europe as a bulwark against the Soviet expansion. So even like before the war was over, I talked about this in the Tesla episode a little bit, that they were focusing on how to rebuild Europe afterwards. And Alan Dulles, who became the leader of the CIA for like the majority of its history, was very pro-Nazi and was totally about integrating the Nazis' banking networks and industries into this global banking network that we've kind of been talking about, that the billionaires in America made. They hooked the Nazis straight into that, just plugged them straight into it. So that's what was going on. Rehabilitation of Nazi military leaders. Oh yeah, I'll also say that those billionaires also funded the Nazis, like built all their factories, like General Ford, or not General Ford, Ford Motors had built the stuff with the Nazis. They had built the Nazis' factories and used slave labor. So, and all these other corporations. Rehabilitation, quote unquote, of Nazi military leaders. Former Wehrmacht and SS officers were often rehabilitated and integrated into NATO's military structure. For example, Hans Spiegel and Adolf Hosinger, both of whom had served in high-ranking positions under the Nazi regime, became key figures in NATO's military command. Fascinating. That sounds like a really ethical, moral, righteous, American, democratic thing to do. The Bundeswehr, West Germany's post-war military, also included many Nazi officers, as their expertise was deemed essential for rebuilding Germany's defense capabilities. I think it's going to talk about it later on, but apparently, like, all of the railroads were also Nazi people, and they allegedly, I find this really hard to believe, couldn't find a single person that wasn't a Nazi to work on the railroad. So everybody was a Nazi, so they had to bring them in to the railroad, and all the railroads stopped working as soon as the Nazis left. I find it very hard to believe that there was not a single person in the world that knew about railroads that wasn't a Nazi, but whatever. The Bundeswehr was West Germany's post-war military, also included former Nazi officers. Technological contributions. Former Nazi scientists and engineers contributed to NATO's technological development, particularly in areas like missile defense, aviation, chemical and biological warfare. Doesn't say anything about nuclear for some reason, but obviously that. The U.S. and its allies also benefited from German research on advanced systems such as guided missiles and jet aircraft. Corporate I can't even talk at this point. Corporate continuity. I can't even talk. My brain is fried. Corporate continuity, Nazi enterprises, and post-war industry. Many corporations had collaborated with the SS or benefited from Nazi policies, continued to operate after the war, often with little accountability. These companies played a significant role in the post-war economic recovery of West Germany and were integrated into the broader Western economic system. IG Farben. IG Farben, the chemical conglomerate that was produced Zyklon B, used in the gas chambers, relied heavily on slave labor, was broken up after the war. However, its successor companies such as Bayer, yeah, that's right, Bayer, like the one that makes all of our medicines, the people that had the AIDS, Tylenol scandal, that they were giving people AIDS and Tylenol. Yeah, that was Bayer. Same people. Host became major players in global chemical industry. Many former IG Farben executives retained their positions or moved into other influential roles in post-war Germany. So people that were the most central in the mass killings, they just got corporate positions. They got golden parachutes. Siemens and other corporations. Companies like Siemens, which had used slave labor during the war, continued to thrive and became key contributors to the West Germany's economic miracle. How miraculous. It's kind of like we go back and think of, I was talking about the colonialization and like how with New Zealand, well, I guess maybe not New Zealand as much, but Australia, America, the UK, that they had an economy based on torture. They stole all the money from these lower people, quote unquote lower people, and that's how they got into their positions today. So, called that a economic miracle of the West Germany. That's bullshit. That's racist to say that. That's you're like saying that it was a miracle that the Holocaust happened and that's how these people came to power, because that's exactly what happened. So, no, West Germany was not miraculous. It's anything but that. These corporations often maintain ties to West German intelligence agencies and governments, particularly in the context of Cold War technological competition. Ethical and moral implications. The integration of former Nazis into Western institutions raised significant ethical questions, many of which were overlooked in the context of Cold War priorities. Which it doesn't say this, but a lot of the fears of the Cold War were fabricated. So all of these extreme, terrible things that they're doing were completely useless and for no reason. And it was all just fantasy. They were just paranoid, and they were being told that all this stuff was happening, but like it was all fake. So that's the reason that we gave away all of our power to the Nazis, was because we had been scared into it. Because of the big bad Soviets allegedly were going to come and do all this terrible stuff. But when you go and look at it, it's total propaganda, that it was made up. Not to say that like the Soviets didn't do anything bad, of course, that's not what I'm saying at all. But like basically everything that the CIA was saying about the situation in the Cold War was not true. And some of the other books that I talk about later on, the authors specifically say that. Now, I'll say that, like, you know, as in human history and on Earth, like, no side is perfect. There's no black and white, good guy and bad guy. Both sides do good and bad. So I'll say that also. That there's no good or black and white in history, other than to say that Nazis are bad. That's a black and white. We can say that. That's like the one thing that's there. Nazis are bad. Hopefully that's not illegal to say soon. But war crimes and accountability. Many individuals with ties to the SS or Nazi regime were never held accountable for their actions. In some cases, their pasts were deliberately concealed to facilitate their employment. That is very true. Very, very true. In fact, majority of the Nazis that came to America, they were not honest with what they had done. Like the U.S. government was not honest about what the Nazis had done. It was actually illegal to bring them over, and the U.S. State Department broke the law doing that. And like the president wasn't fully informed. I mean, some of it he was, but the presidents weren't always knowledgeable. That's why they warned them about this. We're going to kind of get to that. Well, I guess I can say it now, that like as they all came to power, as this series of events happened, all these Nazis came to power, and they consolidated power and became more and more powerful over the years. That's when the presidents realized that they've screwed up, that this has gone too far, that that they are so rich and powerful that the president or the United States or our government doesn't have any control over them anymore. They've gone rogue. We have these Nazis in power that have gone rogue. And yeah, FDR, Truman, Eisenhower, they all warned about it. FDR had said, well, he said multiple things, but FDR said the presidents are selected, not elected. So that's a very interesting statement. But Eisenhower, or no, it was Truman after that. Truman had said that the Nazis in power, and that the CIA and that their assassination program was out of control and that had gone too far. Then Eisenhower comes and he gives the military-industrial complex speech, which is a lot more famous than these other ones. But all these other presidents, I've come to find out, all warned us about these goddamn Nazis that took over and all of these institutions. And Eisenhower, by the time he says that a conglomerate of corporations hell-bent on perpetual war have come to power, and that the United States doesn't have any representation of its civilians, and that we're going to be in a state of perpetual war because our economy is tied to it. And I can't remember everything he said, but he just spelled it all out. This is exactly what we're talking about. And then JFK came out and said that our assassination program has gone rogue, that and that he was going to end it. And then a week later, and he fired Allen Dulles. A week later, after he tried to end the assassination program and fire Allen Dulles, as well as a bunch of other stuff, he was dead. And I mean, it's not just that simple, but in the book they'll talk about it. And it was the Bush family who had helped them cover up the CIA torture program, assassination program before. And it was the Bush family who had worked on it then at the end, too. And the Bush family's involved with the Nazis as well. So their pasts were deliberately concealed. The U.S. and its allies prioritized anti-communism over justice, leading to the rehabilitation of individuals who had committed or facilitated war crimes, which I don't know how they're saying rehabilitated, because they were not. They were not rehabilitated at all. They still maintained all of their ideologies and ethos. It's just that Allen Dulles and the people in power, these like billionaire people that I'm talking about, that kind of go back to these British like kings and queens type of thing, they believe in the same type of ideology as the Nazis do. So that's why they are able to flesh together and work together so seamlessly. It's because they might not be exactly the same, but ideologically and methodologically they are basically identical. So, legacy of Nazi research. Some of the research conducted by Nazi scientists, particularly in areas like aerospace and chemical weapons, was used by Western institutions despite its unethical origins. This raised questions about the extent to which the U.S. and its allies were willing to compromise their moral principles in pursuit of technological and military superiority. That one should be like repeated over and over. I like that one. Say it louder for that one in the back, for the people in the back. Kind of think back to that sentence again over and over as we're reading this. I should have probably put this at the very beginning. This raised questions about the extent to which the U.S. and its allies were willing to compromise their moral principles in the pursuit of technological and military superiority. How far are they willing to go to maintain their supremacy, their status? How far will the king go to maintain his throne? Conclusion. The integration of Nazi SS personnel, technologies, and corporate networks into institutions like the CIA, NATO, and post-war industries was a pragmatic but morally fraught response to geopolitical realities of the Cold War. The expertise of former Nazis was seen as too valuable to discard, particularly in the face of the Soviet threat. However, this process also meant that many individuals and organizations responsible for atrocities were never held accountable, and their legacies became intertwined with the institutions that emerged in the post-war. See, that's a very important statement as well. So the Nazis that were intertwined in the institutions that emerged into the post-war to today. This dark chapter of history continues to be a subject of scrutiny and debate. And like, we're about to go on to Annie Jacobsen, I think, in Operation Paperclip, in a book about all of this. And she says in the book, which was one of the best ones that I've read on the topic, that she's only scratching the surface. And that there's so many more so much more information and so many more things to be found out about this. Like, we barely know anything about this. Even as much as everything that I've read. This is like nothing. These people have done so much more. And like, the facts of it, they're very secretive. They're very good at hiding things. Extremely good. And that's kind of where we're at right now. Is like a lot of this stuff is coming out for the first time. Like, some of these facts and books were only written in the last like 10 years. Always first at the finish line.